Alright guys, Coach Nathan here. Just wanted to go through some changes that we're going to make to our CrossFit program. So we're not making changes to the classes or the class structures, we're just simply making a change to the programming that you actually do in class and the way that we deliver it. And it'll actually only affect a small amount of people. I felt like pushing a video out would be better because otherwise you're going to have a long essay to write and I'll have to write it. So let's talk about CrossFit. CrossFit in its essence back in the day was a strength and conditioning program. People did it to look good, feel good, move well, move with confidence, and it was a program that you did for 3 to 4 days a week within 4 walls so that you could go out of those 4 walls, run, bike, jump, and live life to the fullest. It then advanced into the sport and the CrossFit Games, and they didn't break the two off. They didn't call it CrossFit the class and CrossFit the sport, which we talked about years ago. And you're actually seeing CrossFit HQ start to do that now a little bit. So we've always tried to deliver CrossFit the class. We want you to move well, look good naked, move with confidence. We want you to be the healthiest version of yourself. Now, being the fittest version of yourself isn't necessarily the healthiest. So if you look at people like Mo Farah, he's really, really fit, but he's maybe not the healthiest individual. When you look at the elite level CrossFitters that are really fit, they may not be the healthiest individuals. And we've always believed that we wanted to deliver a program that builds long-term health. If you wanted to compete in the sport, then that's a personal decision. You've got to figure out what competitions you want to go for. You've got to figure out what your training age is, what your diet's going to be like, what your lifestyle is, what you're willing to sacrifice. And as a consequence, we can't deliver that program in a class because it'd be designed for you. And that's why we developed private coaching. That's why it exists. But we do identify that now we've got some members that have been within the community for like 5 years, and some members that love the classes but just want to put their hat into some regional, small, local CrossFit competitions, that there is a demand there to pepper some of these sport elements into the program. And so by that I mean, in our program you don't tend to see things like pistols and muscle ups and snatches and more complex movements, because we feel like programming for 180 to 200 people, and that is a challenge, we feel that most of those people want to come in, move well, look good, and actually there's better movements to do that. So it's much better to get people to move well through a kettlebell, which effectively is the same movement, it's a hinge as the snatch. So you always see us put kettlebells in and not snatches. But like I said, there's definitely a small population, maybe about 15% of those individuals in the CrossFit program that maybe do want something a little bit more challenging. So what we've done is really rack our heads over the last few weeks on how to deliver that. I've spoken with a couple of our older members, spoken with a couple of guys that have done our RX Plus programming, and obviously spoken with the coaches as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to start putting in a more complex program that runs alongside CrossFit. Now, everything remains the same. You still book in as normal, you still turn up on class as normal. I'm sure if you're a competitive CrossFit that's doing more sport, you'll probably be turning up early anyway because you're hitting that mobility stuff before class. So you still turn up, nothing changes. What does change is as you start going through the session, you'll see that there's options to do slightly more complex programming. So we love doing EMOMs, especially in shoulder work and gymnastics density, and a good example is this. In classes, we may program an EMOM, 12-minute EMOM. Minute 1, we do some handstand technique, maybe some handstand holds, maybe some shoulder taps. Minute 2, we'll hold a plank. We're going to try and hit that same consistency out for 12 minutes. That's great, but for the athletes that maybe want to be a bit more competitive, what we're going to do is program you a 12-9-6 strict handstand push-up workout with a 12-minute time cap. So it's the same time domain, it's the same movement, it's just a little bit more complex. Now there's a caveat, we won't be able to coach you as much during this, because if we've got 1 or 2 athletes that are fire breathers that want to do this and they're experienced and they've been in the community for 5-6 years, they probably actually don't need us to coach them as much during this time as the guys that are newer. But it gives you the option, if you feel confident, that you can hit this. The same for a workout, right? So for a workout, you might have a 5 rounds for time, run 200, maybe 20 pull-ups, and 20 burpees. And the RX Plus, or the competitor side, would be exactly the same run, but we may switch this to chest to bars. We may do this as a burpee to a 6-inch touch on the rig. Now what I would say is, if you do want to hit that competitive side, that sports side, if you see a workout that is 20 chest to bars, run, and burpees, and you're thinking to yourself, you know what, I can't quite get these chest to bars, but I can jump up to the 6-inch target, I personally would move back to doing this RX, because one, the coach can actually coach this, and secondly, this will always eventually build into this. So don't ever scale a competitive workout, because if you're scaling a competitive workout, you're just regressing back to an RX, and that's really what you want to be doing. Now sometimes they won't be the same. If we're practicing or we're testing a 2K row, then I'm not going to make that harder for no reason. The RX or the normal CrossFit class won't be a row 2K and then the sport or competitive version be a row 2K with a weighted vest backwards and you can only use one arm. There's no point making it harder sometimes, especially when the limiting factor is your aerobic system. But when the limiting factor is skill or weight, then sometimes you will make it more complex. Now, to tidy it up and to make it really, really simple for people to deliver that on programming, this is my perfect sugar wad diagram. This is somebody working out. Now, you'll know that as standard, you just get the workout of the day and that comes through on class because that's our most popular class. So that's what we prioritize on the front. It follows through a sequence as per normal. For the guys that want to have a look at the competitive programming that day, you'll be able to tick down, same as you can for the barbell classes, and see if there's any kind of RX Plus or competitive versions. It's better for this 85% because it keeps the sugar wad and the programming really simple, and it's better for the competitive guys because they can see an option and know that if they're going to hit that or if they're just going to go through on the normal class. Like I say, nothing changes. You book in as per normal. You come in as per normal. 65 to 70% of the session will be exactly the same, and 65 to 70% of all the sessions will probably be the same as RX. We've tested it out the last couple of weeks, so some of our classes have been a lot harder. So take Mondays this week, that was a pretty spicy workout with high volume ring dips, and then we've taken it back, so some of our sessions last week were pretty easy. And we're always trying to measure the percentage of people that are doing RX, how many people are coming in that day, and kind of what the stimulus is at the end of it. We've also tested it with another gym out here, and hopefully you've been following us on Instagram and you can see that. So it's going to take us a bit of time to figure it out, and like we said on a blog earlier in the week, you know, sometimes the programming pendulums, so sometimes it can be hard for a week, and sometimes it's a little bit too easy. But we feel like kind of breaking this CrossFit program into two things, effectively what we're doing now, and then something a little bit spicier for the fire breathers that really want to work on that skill acquisition, that 15%, is going to be a really good way to do that. Like I said, nothing changes. There's a hell of a lot more work for the coaches to do as far as programming, but there's no upcharge on membership for the people that want to do it. You guys all pay the same. We're just trying to give you more options around your training. If you've got any questions, then just hit reply. So I'll embed this video onto our YouTube, and I'll send out an email that comes from me. If you've got any questions around this, then just hit reply. All the best.